Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. So I just want to take a second right here to start and remind you that Rhea and I do have a new Blue Collar Leadership YouTube channel. We put new videos out pretty much every week, sometimes several videos, but usually at least one long-form video, some shorts from some of our other videos, things like that. But anyway, if you're not familiar with that, go check it out. Subscribe if you like it. Tap the bell if you want to be notified whenever we put out new stuff. And in the future, I will be some of the videos we're doing some live LinkedIn. Some of those videos are 30 minutes or so, and I will be taking the audio from some of those videos and actually creating podcasts for those in the future. So you'll either be able to watch them on the YouTube channel or either listen to them here on the podcast. But today we're going to continue on with my series on my book, Who's Buying You? Until You Sell Yourself, You Won't Sell Much. So chapter 16 is where we're at, part 16 of 30. The chapter title is Transparency Sells. So transparency is telling the truth when you don't have to, simply because you want to. That's why transparency, you can build a lot of trust by being transparent. Obviously, if you're being transparent about some shady stuff and you hadn't gotten away from that life, probably not going to build a lot of trust unless you're talking to other people who have the same values in that shady space as you may have. But that ain't really what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about being transparent with the intent to build trust. Because when you're telling the truth, when you don't have to, people tend to trust you more. Just like you tend to trust other people who are being transparent and truthful with you. So if you're a sales professional, being transparent with the customers or potential customers is a way to build trust instead of, trying to hide things or maybe beat around the bush or don't tell the truth completely. But I want to share a quote with you here from Susan Scott. And she says, "Our work, our relationships, and our lives succeed or fail one conversation at a time." Basically what she's talking about is influence based on those relationships. It doesn't matter if you're in professional sales or not. That quote right there, the principle in that quote, our work, our relationships, and our lives succeed or fail one conversation at a time. That's how we build up to who we are. It's through the conversations that we have with people or the conversations people have about us because of who they think we are, who they know we are. And there ain't nothing you can do about it except for one thing. You can make sure it ain't true. So if you want to leverage the truth, you can make additional deposits into people's trust accounts and the emotional trust account by being transparent. And how? You tell the truth when you don't have to, simply because you want to. When you tell the truth when you don't have to, the buyer will trust you more, not less. When you're in a sales role, when you can be transparent, which really means all we're trying to do is increase our influence with other people. Only the most skilled salespeople leverage the principle of transparency, though. Transparency is king. You see, amateur salespeople, regardless of how many years of experience they have or what their title is, they would say, if they don't ask, you don't tell. Never reveal anything you don't have to. That's what amateur salespeople would say. And some of those people, if they say and don't ask, if the people that's buying from you don't ask, you don't tell them. Never reveal anything you don't have to. Never get yourself cornered, these kind of folks would say. Don't back yourself into a corner by sharing more than you need to. When I'm saying amateur salespeople, it don't mean they're 18 years old, fresh out of high school in a sales job. I mean, they're thinking like I just described to you. That's what an amateur salesperson, that's how they think. Sales pros, whether they're 18 or 48 or 68, they think differently. Pretty powerful. Because your character is always shouting who you are to the buyer and everyone else, even if they're not buying. Remember, anyone can give you positive or negative word-of-mouth advertisement. They don't have to be buying anything from you. They could just be observing who you are, especially if you are selling to someone. But you don't have to be selling anything. You just be hanging out in life. And somebody can see you do something, and they give you bad word-of-mouth advertisement. If you happen to be a professional salesperson, that negative word of mouth advertisement could cost you a lot of dollars. But your character's always shouting who you are to the buyer and everyone else. Thing is, you can't hear it, but everyone else can. They can hear it. So telling the truth shouts to the buyers that you're honest when you're supposed to be. Being transparent shouts to the buyers that you're choosing to be honest and open when you don't have to be. That's a big difference. Because again, telling the truth shouts to buyers that you're honest when you're supposed to be, but being transparent shouts to buyers that you're choosing to be honest and open when you don't have to be. Transparency communicates you are on the buyer's team. You're helping them. You're sharing information you have simply because you know they would like to have it. They may not be asking for it. You're just being transparent. You're offering it up front. But transparency allows you to make big deposits into the emotional trust accounts of other people. Again, it depends on what you're being transparent about, right? It's all relative. In this context, I'm saying, though, you're being transparent about yourself, your product, your business, that sort of stuff. You ain't trying to hide anything. This is one of the first things I tell the buyer when I'm actually selling something. This will save me and them both some time. And if the buyer must pay the full asking price, I'm not only being transparent by telling them up front, but I'm also being respectful. I'm telling them this is how much I want for it. And I don't try to sell something that's like ridiculously priced. If I'm selling something, it's a fair price. I've already checked around, did my research. I know it's a fair price because I ain't trying to beat somebody out of any money. And I ain't trying to lose a bunch of money. I just want a good, decent, fair price. And most of the time when I'm selling something, it doesn't matter if I sell it then or if I don't sell it at all. So I tell people up front, hey, this is what I'm asking for it. Ain't no haggling. You welcome to buy it. You also welcome not to buy it. But I just want to save us both some time up front. This is what it costs. So several years ago, been quite a few years ago now, maybe 10 or 12 years ago. I can't even remember. But I decided I had a 2003 50th anniversary Corvette Z06. Had that thing all tricked out with long tube headers. It sounded like a NASCAR race car. It was my baby. I loved that thing. I had always wanted a Corvette, and I had never even been in a Corvette till I got in that one on the lot to test drive it. It was silver with black leather interior, and I mean, it was awesome. So I had lots of fun in that car, but Rhea called it the other woman because I took such good care of it and spent so much time driving and cleaning it. I drove it all the time. It had like 110,000 miles, and it was in excellent condition. I drove it a lot, but I kept it up. I kept it squared away. And it's basically like brand new. And I created an online ad with pictures and detailed information, and I had no intention of negotiating the asking price. I decided what I want to sell it for, and that's what I set the price for. So soon after I had it listed, I got a call from a potential buyer. I was living in Alabama, and this person called me from Ohio. So, quite several states away from where I lived. But he was very interested because it was the 50th anniversary model, and he'd been looking for a Z06 Corvette. And so as a car enthusiast, he had lots of questions. And they were all easy to answer because the car was truly in excellent condition. I mean, I kept it up. Things happened to it, but I fixed it all. I fixed everything that was damaged while I had it. And I didn't buy it new, but it was almost new when I bought it. It didn't have very many miles on it at all. But after he had asked all the questions and was satisfied with my answers, he said he'd take it. There was no haggling. I said, that's great. But in full transparency, there's a few things you need to know that you didn't ask about. That's what I told him. Remember, he's in Ohio. He wasn't looking at the car. He wasn't standing in my garage or in my driveway. He was on the phone in Ohio, and I was in Alabama. So I proceeded to tell him it had a small tear on the driver's seat and had one of the air conditioning vents had been broken. I just put a little super glue on it, fixed it. You couldn't tell it. So I wasn't spending money to replace that broken vent, but you couldn't tell it. Nobody would ever even know. And I was being transparent. I told him I had glued it back together before I decided to sell it. Not after I decided to sell it. I also told him I had all the original parts to go with the car. He didn't ask me that because I had a custom stereo system in there, custom woofers and all this kind of speaker system in the back of it, in the trunk. Long tube headers and the exhaust system. Had a Boyle exhaust system put on there with the long tube headers. But that car came with titanium exhaust system. But I had all the original parts. But he didn't ask about it, but I told him about it after he decided he wanted to buy it. So I didn't have to tell him about those things. He didn't ask. I especially didn't have to tell him about the broken vent. He would have never even known it. But I knew exactly what I was doing. First of all, I was being honest. Second of all, I was being transparent. And since I didn't have to tell him those things, it meant more because he had already decided to buy the car because he knew I was building trust. And he knew I wasn't trying to manipulate him because I had his best interest in mind, not mine. I could have told him something that caused him not to want to buy the car. But guess what? If he didn't want it, I didn't want him to have it. I didn't really want to sell it anyway. The reason I was selling it because we were getting ready to start this journey that we're on now. And I was letting all my lean manufacturing consultant clients contracts run out. I was trying to make sure we were in a good spot to be successful with this business. I had a Ford Raptor truck too that I still had, and I was going to be driving it for a while. Eventually I sold it. Rhea had a Hummer. We sold it. And I got a little Nissan Sentra, and Rhea got a little Toyota Corolla, and we drove those cars for about 5 years while we were transitioning from what both of us used to do to what we're doing now. We gave up. We had lots of sacrifices, but that's the law of sacrifice. You got to give up to go up. And that's what we were doing. So this is just a story that's actually related to that that's in this sales book. So since I didn't have to tell him those things, it meant more because he'd already decided to buy the car. He knew I wasn't trying to manipulate him because I had his best interest in mind, not mine. He could have easily changed his mind. However, my intent was to build trust, and that's exactly what I did. He won, and I won. He didn't get any surprises, and I didn't have to try to hurriedly get him in and out of the car when he actually did come to buy it. But he thanked me and mentioned how honest he thought I was. And check this out. He mailed me a money order for the full asking price 2 weeks before he ever saw the car. Because when that day we talked on the phone and he decided he'd take the car, he wanted it. He wanted to make sure I didn't sell it to anybody else. So he got me a money order in the mail right away, full price. And his money was in my bank, and the car that was now his sat in my garage for 2 weeks before he arrived to pick it up. Because of my transparency, he trusted me, and trust sells. So him and his wife drove down. You know what was really amazing about that was, I'll never forget that guy. He got there, and actually my wife had cooked some homemade pizza for dinner. We knew what time they were coming, and they drove straight down. They were going to turn around and drive straight back home. So they drove down about 10 hours and had about a 10 or 11 hour drive to head back home. But they had dinner with us. And then we went out, actually when he first got there, looked at the car. Then we went and had dinner. And then we went out and they was getting ready to go. He said, "Take me down the road in it." I said, "It's your car, man. You're going to drive it home." He said, "No, I won't." He said, "Anytime I buy a car, I like the person I buy it from to take me for a drive in it, one last drive." I said, "All right, man, we'll go down the road." And we went out of my neighborhood and kind of got out on the main road. He said, "I want you to drive it like you always drove it." He said, "This ain't the way you told me you drove it." Because I told him I drove it hard, but I kept it up. I mean, I had to replace the transmission one time, but I kept it up. I had a phenomenal mechanic, and I kept that thing squared away. But when the transmission broke, I got a good high quality replacement to put back in it. So it really had about a new transmission when he got it. But I told him all that stuff. He said, "Drive it like you used to drive it." I said, "All right, man." We pulled out on that main road. It was smoking the tires in first gear, smoking them in second gear, and chirping them in third gear, doing about 80 miles an hour when you'd shift from second to third. And we were gone. We got up about probably 140 miles an hour. I don't do that stuff anymore. I'm better now. But back then, I drove that car like that every day. I think I had it about 3 or 4 years. I don't remember how many sets of tires I put on that car, but it was a lot. Something crazy like that. But anyway, so I got away with a lot of speeding in that Corvette Z06, but I got the Nissan Sentra, and I had to try to drive right in that thing. When you focus on being transparent when you're trying to sell something, you're going to build a lot of trust. I mean, this man sent me a check for some good money, and I put it in my bank, and he don't even know me. So, at the end of each chapter, I always give you 3 seller beware points to think about that relates to the chapter. They come directly from the book. The 3 points for this week: seller beware. Point number 1, transparency is a deeper level of truth. Be transparent. Seller beware. Point number 2, transparency can be leveraged for extra deposits. And I'm talking about deposits into the emotional trust account. Seller beware. Point number 3, your character will determine how transparent you are. So you think about that. If you're really not transparent and truthful with people, that's a reflection of your character. Why are you not that way? What do you have to hide? And some people don't have to hide anything. They just want to hide some things. You share whatever you want. But when it comes to selling, again, related to you, your product, your business, your service, whatever it's got to do with the sale, if you can't be transparent, why? Something about your character is not allowing you to be transparent. You could say, well, it ain't me, it's this company I work for. Well, something about your character is causing you to work for that company that you don't seem to think too much of. There's lots of variables. The point for this chapter was to help you just provoke some thought, raise some awareness, especially if you're a sales professional, how being transparent can build trust. Just think about it. If you had 2 salespeople and you really couldn't tell them apart, but one of them was very transparent, the only difference was this. One of them was very transparent, and the other one seemed to be a little shady. Everything else, you couldn't tell the difference. Everything else, the same. Except one's transparent, one is not. Which one you want to do business with? It's obvious. The one that's transparent. The reason it's obvious because when you separate that one trait out, assume all the rest are the same so that you can see this one clearly, you can see the value of this one trait. So somebody who wants to beat around the bush, not tell the whole truth, not tell the full truth, leave out some details, that person compared to the person who's being transparent, it ain't even close. Everybody would pick the person being transparent if you had to pick someone to buy from. So the key question and the most important question for you at this moment, relative to this episode, is which one are you when you're selling something? Like with me selling my Corvette. Are you the person that would tell all the little things that was wrong with it when you didn't have to? A lot of people sell things, they try to make sure, they try to cover up the things so that people can't see it when they know that there's something wrong with it. They try to hide it intentionally. That's the complete opposite. Nobody would say they want to buy from that person relative to someone who's being transparent. But what I know, because of 54 years of living, there's a lot of people like that. A lot of times I don't know that it's a salesperson, because a lot of times the salesperson, I don't know them that well. Or if I'm buying something from an individual, I don't know them that well. The reason I know it so well are people I've known that I've interacted with throughout my 54 years of living. Some of them were people I worked with, some were friends, some were family, some were friends of friends, or friends of family, or friends of coworkers, all kind of different relationships that I've had. And I've known people who are selling stuff who try to hide problems with it. I mean, some people, they'll have a problem with a car or a truck or something. They're trying to sell it. They're trying to get rid of it because they know they got a problem. But then when they sell it, they're trying to pretend that it ain't no problem whatsoever in it. That's what I'm talking about. You can be that person if you want to. But if you are, you need to be thinking about looking in the mirror. What is it about your character that you're okay with being that way? I ain't okay with being that way. But a lot of people are. Hope you got some value out of this lesson. Hope I was able to
Make it happen, or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.